The day Amara Okafor corrected Gregory Denton's French, she signed her professional death warrant. He was CEO of Denton Global. She was just a waitress with dreams bigger than her bank account. Nobody corrected Gregory Denton. Within months, he'd orchestrated her spectacular rise and calculated downfall at his company, weaponizing everything from falsified translations to media headlines against her. The board believed him. The investors believed him. Everyone believed him. But Gregory had overlooked something critical. People who grow up translating worlds don't just understand languages, they understand power. And Amara had been studying power all her life. As she clutched the flash drive containing evidence of his systematic discrimination, Amara knew that sometimes justice doesn't need a courtroom. Sometimes, it just needs one person brave enough to speak truth in her own voice. The first light of dawn crept through the thin curtains of Amara Okafor's small apartment. Her alarm hadn't gone off yet, but she was already awake, moving quietly through the cramped space so as not to disturb her younger sister. 14-year-old Mika was still sound asleep, her textbooks scattered across the second-hand coffee table where she'd been studying late into the night. Amara paused at Mika's bedroom door, watching her sister's peaceful breathing for a moment before heading to the kitchen. Their tiny refrigerator hummed loudly in the quiet morning as she pulled out ingredients for Mika's lunch: turkey sandwich with the crusts cut off, apple slices, and a small container of peanut butter, just the way Mika liked it. She scribbled a quick note of encouragement in both English and French, tucking it beside the sandwich. Bonne chance avec ton examen aujourd'hui, she whispered, practicing her accent. Good luck with your test today. With Mika's lunch prepared, Amara spread her own study materials across the kitchen table. Language flashcards in French and Mandarin were organized into neat piles, color-coded by difficulty. She had an hour before she needed to wake Mika for school. An hour to review her own studies before getting ready for her night shift at La Maison d'Or. Amara had been working at the upscale French-Vietnamese fusion restaurant for nearly 3 years now. The pay wasn't great, but Mrs. Boudreau, the elderly owner, was flexible with her schedule, understanding Amara's need to balance work with her language studies at the community college. More importantly, the restaurant's international clientele gave her plenty of opportunities to practice her languages in real-world settings. Wo jiao Amara, she practiced in Mandarin, flipping through flashcards. Han gao xing ren xini. The pile of bills on the counter caught her eye, the red final notice stamp on the electric bill impossible to ignore. Since their mother had passed away 2 years ago, Amara had become both sister and parent to Mika, shouldering the weight of their mounting debt while trying to keep her own dreams alive. She pushed the bills aside. There would be time to worry about them later. For now, she had languages to master. By the time Amara arrived for her shift at La Maison d'Or that evening, the restaurant was already buzzing with the dinner crowd. The soft glow of crystal chandeliers illuminated the dining room, casting warm light over the white tablecloths and gleaming silverware. Cutting it close tonight, eh? Marcus, the head waiter, winked as she hurried through the kitchen. At 24, he'd been working at La Maison d'Or since high school and knew all the regulars by name. Sorry, Amara replied, quickly tying her apron. Mika had a French test to study for, and I lost track of time. You and those languages, Marcus laughed, handing her a stack of menus. Table 7 needs water, and 12 just sat down. VIPs, from what I hear. Amara nodded, taking a deep breath to center herself before stepping onto the restaurant floor. La Maison d'Or catered to Boston's elite, business executives, politicians, old money families who appreciated the unique blend of French classics with Vietnamese influences. The menu was written entirely in French, with small Vietnamese additions, a touch Mrs. Boudreau insisted upon to maintain authenticity. As Amara approached table 12, she immediately sensed the power dynamics at play. 3 men in expensive suits, leaning in over the table in deep conversation. The man with his back to the restaurant seemed to be leading the discussion, his voice carrying just enough to draw attention without seeming to try. Gentlemen, Amara greeted them with a warm smile, placing water glasses on the table. Welcome to La Maison d'Or. May I tell you about our specials this evening? The man in charge turned, revealing a handsome face hardened by ambition. His steel gray eyes assessed Amara with the cold calculation of someone used to measuring others solely by their usefulness. Gregory Denton, he introduced himself unnecessarily, as if Amara should recognize the name. CEO of Denton Global Holdings, he gestured to his companions. James Wright, CFO, and Elias Monroe, our head of international relations. While James barely acknowledged her with a nod, Elias, a tall man with kind eyes and salt and pepper hair, offered a genuine smile. Pleasure to meet you, Amara replied professionally. Our chef has prepared a wonderful canard à l'orange this evening with a Vietnamese lemongrass reduction that je voudrais commander le bœuf bourguignon, Gregory interrupted, his French pronunciation butchered beyond recognition. He glanced at his companions with smug satisfaction, clearly pleased with himself. Amara hesitated only a moment before gently correcting him. Le bœuf bourguignon, monsieur. An excellent choice. Gregory's smile froze on his face. He stared at Amara, eyes narrowing slightly. Didn't know they hired linguists in aprons here, he said, his tone casual but with a sharp edge. Just trying to be helpful, sir, Amara replied evenly, maintaining her composure. Well, since you're so helpful, Gregory continued, picking up the menu and waving it in front of her. Why don't you translate this for us? If you're so smart, then translate it. The challenge hung in the air. James looked uncomfortable, while Elias watched with quiet interest. Several diners at nearby tables had fallen silent, the tension palpable. Without blinking, Amara took a deep breath and began to translate. First in perfect French, then fluent Spanish, switching seamlessly to Mandarin, and finally Vietnamese. Her newest language and still not perfect, but impressive nonetheless. Each word flowed naturally, her accent shifting appropriately with each language. When she finished, the silence around them was deafening. Then from a corner table, someone began to applaud softly. Soon others joined in, impressed by the unexpected display of linguistic prowess. Gregory's face had turned an alarming shade of red. He snatched the menu back, his knuckles white with tension. Parlor tricks don't close deals, he muttered, loud enough for his companions to hear. I'll have the steak, rare. He looked past Amara as if she'd suddenly become invisible. And tell the chef not to overdo it this time. As Amara took the rest of their orders, she noticed Elias Monroe studying her with newfound interest, though he remained silent. James kept his eyes fixed on his water glass, clearly wanting no part in the tension. Very impressive, Elias said quietly, as she finished writing down their orders. Gregory shot him a sharp look. We're here to discuss the Singapore merger, not recruit staff. Under his breath he added, uppity service staff should know their place. Though the words weren't meant for her ears, Amara heard them clearly. She maintained her professional smile, refusing to let him see how the barb had landed. I'll put these orders in right away, gentlemen. In the kitchen, Amara took a moment to compose herself, hands braced against the cool metal prep table. I saw what happened out there, came a raspy voice behind her. Mrs. Boudreau, the restaurant's 70-year-old owner, stood in the doorway of her office. Born in Senegal, raised in France, and married to a Vietnamese chef, Claudette Boudreau had built La Maison d'Or from nothing after immigrating to America 40 years ago. That man, Mrs. Boudreau continued, her accent still thick despite decades. In Boston, he tries to make you small because your brightness shows him how dim he is. Amara smiled weakly. It's fine, Mrs. B, I'm used to it. No. The older woman's voice was firm. Never get used to it. Never let them shrink your brilliance. She patted Amara's hand. My mother taught me. When they try to bury you, remember, you are a seed. You grow through it, yes? Amara nodded, grateful for the wisdom. Yes, ma'am. Good. Now take table 4 their appetizers before Marcus has a fit. The rest of the evening passed without incident. Gregory Denton's table was demanding but manageable, with Gregory himself barely acknowledging Amara's existence after their initial encounter. She noticed Elias watching her occasionally, but his gaze was thoughtful rather than judgmental. By the time her shift ended at midnight, Amara was exhausted. Her feet ached as she waited for the bus that would take her home to Dorchester. The late-night route was sparse, with only a few other passengers, mostly service workers heading home after long shifts downtown. When Amara finally unlocked her apartment door, she expected to find the lights off and Mika asleep. Instead, her sister was sitting on the couch, still in her school clothes, clutching a piece of paper. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying. "Mika, what's wrong? Why are you still up?" Mika wordlessly handed over the paper. It was an eviction notice. 3 months behind on rent. 72 hours to pay or vacate. "I found it taped to the door when I got home from school," Mika said, her voice small. "I was scared to be alone, so I waited up for you." Amara's heart sank as she read the notice. The rent money had gone to their mother's medical bills, then to school supplies for Mika, then to fix the car they could no longer afford to keep. Each month, she'd promised herself she would catch up, but each month brought new emergencies. New expenses. "It's going to be okay," Amara said, sitting beside her sister and pulling her close. "We've been through worse, right? Remember when the heat went out last winter?" "We slept in the same bed for a week," Mika said with a weak smile. "And you read me stories in French to practice." "Exactly. And we made it through that, didn't we? We'll make it through this too." As Mika finally drifted off to sleep in her own bed, Amara sat at the kitchen table, staring at the eviction notice under the harsh fluorescent light. The forced optimism she'd shown her sister faded, replaced by the cold reality of their situation. They had nowhere else to go, no family to take them in. Their mother's relatives were all back in Nigeria, people they knew only through occasional phone calls and photos. Amara rested her head in her hands, allowing herself a moment of despair before straightening up. She couldn't afford to fall apart. Mika was counting on her. Tomorrow she would call the landlord, beg for an extension. She would pick up extra shifts, sell something, anything. For now, though, she needed sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new problems to solve. She just hoped she would be strong enough to face them. The following afternoon found Amara back at La Maison d'Or for an unexpected lunch shift. Marcus had called in sick, and Mrs. Boudreau had offered her the extra hours, a small blessing, given their financial situation. The lunch crowd was lighter than dinner service, mostly business people having quick meetings over salads and sparkling water. Amara was clearing a recently vacated table when the bell above the door chimed. She glanced up and froze. Standing in the entrance, looking somewhat out of place in the half-empty restaurant, was Elias Monroe. He spotted her immediately and approached with purposeful strides. "Miss Okafor," he greeted her, his deep voice carrying a hint of warmth. "I hoped I might find you here." Amara straightened, balancing the tray of dirty dishes. "Mr. Monroe, are you meeting Mr. Denton for lunch?" "No, I'm here to see you, actually." Elias glanced around. "Is there somewhere we could talk privately for a moment?" Confusion and wariness mingled in Amara's mind. "I'm working, Mr. Monroe." "It won't take long, I promise. It's a professional matter." Mrs. Boudreau appeared behind Amara, having overheard the exchange. "Take 15 minutes, Amara. Use my office." Her sharp eyes assessed Elias. "The door stays open." Minutes later, Amara sat across from Elias at Mrs. Boudreau's cluttered desk. "I should introduce myself properly," Elias began. "I'm Elias Monroe, Senior Vice President of International Relations at Denton Global Holdings, but also a silent partner in the company." He leaned forward slightly. "Your linguistic abilities last night were extraordinary." "Thank you," Amara replied cautiously. "But I doubt you came here just to compliment my French." A smile ghosted across Elias's face. "Direct. I appreciate that." He placed a business card on the desk. "I have a proposition for you. We're hosting a critical investor meeting next week. Representatives from Korea, Japan, Vietnam, and several European countries will be present. Our usual translation service had to cancel unexpectedly, and finding qualified replacements on short notice has been challenging." "And you thought of the waitress who embarrassed your boss?" Amara couldn't keep the skepticism from her voice. "I thought of the most impressive polyglot I've encountered in years," Elias corrected her. "Gregory doesn't know I'm here, and yes, he would be less than thrilled with my initiative. But this meeting is too important to risk miscommunication." What exactly are you offering? 1 day of your time. 8 hours as a freelance translator. We'll provide briefing materials in advance so you can familiarize yourself with the technical terms. He named a figure that made Amara's eyes widen. Triple her monthly salary at the restaurant. That's generous, she managed. It's market rate for specialized linguistic services, Elias replied matter-of-factly. Your skills are worth it. Amara's mind raced. The money would cover their back rent with enough left over to get ahead on the next month. It seemed too perfect, which made her suspicious. Why would you trust someone you just met with something so important? Is this some kind of setup? Elias sat back, his expression serious. I've been with Denton Global for 15 years. In that time, I've learned to recognize exceptional talent when I see it. Gregory was out of line last night, but his behavior inadvertently revealed a potential asset. He shrugged. As for trust, the materials are confidential, but not classified. You'd sign a standard NDA. Amara thought of the eviction notice sitting on her kitchen table, of Mika's tearful face. When is this meeting? Next Thursday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., our downtown office. After Elias left, Mrs. Boudreau found Amara still sitting in the office, staring at Elias's business card. Well, the older woman prompted. What did the suit want? Amara explained the offer. Mrs. Boudreau listened without interrupting, her weathered face revealing nothing. You're going to take it, she said when Amara finished. It wasn't a question. I don't know. It feels complicated. Mrs. Boudreau laughed, a rough sound like sandpaper. Life is complicated, child. Money is simple. They need what you have. Make them pay for it. What if it's a trap? What if Mr. Denton set this up to humiliate me again? Then you smile, take their money, and walk away with your head high. Mrs. Boudreau tapped the desk with a gnarled finger. But I don't think it's a trap. The man who came here, his eyes are honest. The other one, the big boss with the bad French, his eyes are like a snake. Learn to tell the difference. The following Thursday, Amara stood outside the gleaming glass tower of Denton Global Holdings, her heart hammering in her chest. She'd spent every spare moment of the past week studying the briefing materials Elias had sent over. Complex financial terms in multiple languages, industry-specific vocabulary, cultural nuances that might affect negotiations. The lobby was all marble and steel, designed to intimidate. Amara smoothed down her only business suit, a navy blue ensemble found at a thrift store and altered by hand to fit her tall frame. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, professional and unobtrusive. Miss Okafor? A receptionist approached. Mr. Monroe asked me to escort you upstairs. The elevator whisked them to the 38th floor, where Elias waited by a set of glass doors. You made it, he said, relief evident in his voice. The Korean contingent arrived early. Everyone else is on their way. He lowered his voice. Gregory knows you're coming. He wasn't pleased, but the board overruled him. Just be prepared. Amara nodded, swallowing her nervousness. I've studied all the materials. I'm ready. The boardroom was impressive. A long table of polished mahogany surrounded by leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Boston Harbor. A few people were already seated, conversing quietly in Korean. They looked up curiously as Amara entered. Gregory Denton stood at the head of the table, deep in conversation with an assistant. When he spotted Amara, his expression hardened into a cold glare. He excused himself and strode over. Mr. Monroe's charity project, he said by way of greeting, voice low enough that only she and Elias could hear. Let's be clear. You're here as a translator, nothing more. You speak when spoken to. You translate exactly what is said. No embellishments, no interpretations. One mistake and you're out. Understood. Perfectly, Mr. Denton, Amara replied evenly. Good. He turned to walk away, then paused. And try not to embarrass yourself. This isn't a restaurant where party tricks impress tourists. As the room filled, with executives and investors, Amara took her assigned seat near the middle of the table. Elias had positioned her strategically, equidistant from the various international representatives. She noticed several glances in her direction, curiosity, assessment, and in a few cases dismissal. She was clearly the youngest person in the room, and one of only 3 women. The meeting began with Gregory's polished welcome, followed by presentations from various department heads. Amara listened attentively, occasionally providing whispered translations to those seated near her when technical terms caused confusion. 2 hours in, during a discussion of market expansion into Southeast Asia, a problem arose. Mr. Park, the lead Korean investor, frowned deeply while reviewing a contract addendum. He spoke rapidly in Korean to his colleagues, his tone increasingly agitated. The company's junior translator, a nervous young man who had been struggling all morning, looked panicked. "I'm sorry, he's speaking too quickly. Something about the terms being different?" The room tensed. Gregory's face darkened as he watched a potential multi-million-dollar deal begin to unravel over a translation issue. Amara hesitated only briefly before leaning forward. "Jisong hamnida," she addressed. Mr. Park in Korean, apologizing for interrupting. Then, switching between Korean and English with practiced ease, she clarified the point of contention, a subtle but critical difference in how profit sharing was calculated in the Korean version of the document versus the English version. Mr. Park listened intently, his expression softening as Amara explained. She suggested specific language that would resolve the ambiguity, maintaining the agreement's integrity while addressing his concerns. When she finished, Mr. Park nodded approvingly and said in heavily accented English, "This is acceptable solution. We continue." The tension in the room dissipated. Several people exhaled audibly. Gregory's expression was unreadable as the meeting resumed its normal flow. During the lunch break, Elias found Amara in a quiet corner of the executive lounge. "That was impressive," he said, handing her a bottle of water. "You potentially saved us months of renegotiation." "It was a simple misunderstanding," Amara replied modestly. "The Korean term for net profits can be interpreted differently depending on context. Simple for you, perhaps." Elias glanced across the room where Gregory stood with several board members. "He's not happy about being upstaged, but even he can't deny your value today." The afternoon session proceeded more smoothly. Amara moved between language groups with quiet confidence, facilitating communication rather than merely translating words. When the Vietnamese representatives expressed cultural concerns about certain negotiation tactics, she helped bridge the gap, explaining nuances to both sides. By the time the meeting concluded, the atmosphere was celebratory. Contracts had been signed, hands shaken, photos taken for press releases. Amara stood to the side, her job complete, watching as Gregory accepted congratulations from board members and investors alike. Elias approached her one last time. "The board was impressed," he said without preamble. "They've authorized me to offer you a part-time position as a language consultant. 3 days a week, flexible hours to accommodate your studies." Amara stared at him in disbelief. "Part-time? You mean a real job? Here?" "With benefits and tuition assistance," Elias confirmed. "We'd be fools to let talent like yours walk out the door." Before she could respond, Gregory joined them, his smile tight and professional. "Ms. Okafor, it seems congratulations are in order. Your assistance today was fortuitous." "Thank you, Mr. Denton," Amara replied carefully. "Elias has convinced the board of your potential value to the company." He handed her a folder. "Your contract. Human Resources will expect you Monday morning. I'll be assigning your projects personally to ensure you're properly utilized." The threat beneath the professional veneer was unmistakable. Gregory Denton might have been forced to accept her presence, but he wasn't going to make it easy. As Amara left the building, contract in hand, her phone buzzed with a text from Mika. "How did it go?" She smiled, typing back, "I got the job. We're going to be okay." But as she walked to the bus stop, Amara couldn't shake the feeling that this victory was just the beginning of a much bigger battle. She had crossed a line today, from service worker to corporate professional, from background to foreground, and in doing so, she had made a powerful enemy. The sun was setting as her bus pulled away from downtown, casting long shadows between the skyscrapers. Amara watched Gregory Denton emerge from the building, sliding into the back of a waiting town car. Their eyes met briefly through the bus window. In that moment, something passed between them. A recognition, a challenge. Gregory might have the power, the position, the privilege. But Amara had something he couldn't buy or intimidate away. Brilliance that refused to be diminished. As the bus lurched forward into traffic, Amara turned away from the window and opened the contract folder. Her new life was about to begin, complicated, challenging, and entirely unexpected. She thought of what Mrs. Boudreau had told her. When they try to bury you, remember you are a seed. It was time to grow. 3 months into her new position. At Denton Global, Amara stood before a packed audience at the Boston Cultural Exchange Center. The nonprofit had invited her to give a talk on the evolution of African languages, particularly how colonization had shaped linguistic patterns across the continent. Public speaking had never been Amara's strength, but as she warmed to her topic, her natural passion took over. Language isn't just communication, she explained, gesturing to the slide showing a map of Nigeria's diverse linguistic regions. It's identity. It's history. When my mother taught me Igbo alongside English, she wasn't just giving me words, she was connecting me to generations before me. The audience was captivated. Professionals, academics, and language enthusiasts nodded along as Amara seamlessly wove personal anecdotes with scholarly insights. In the back row, partially hidden by a column, sat Elias Monroe. He had slipped in quietly after the presentation began, not wanting to distract her. Now he watched with unmistakable pride as his discovery commanded the room. The colonial powers understood that controlling language meant controlling people, Amara continued. They forbade native tongues in schools, in government, in literature. But what they couldn't erase was the resilience of those languages, how they survived in proverbs, in songs, in the secret conversations between parents and children. When the applause finally died down after her closing remarks, Amara found herself surrounded by attendees eager to continue the conversation. Business cards were pressed into her hands. Invitations to speak at universities and cultural organizations followed. It wasn't until the crowd had thinned that she spotted Elias approaching. "That was remarkable," he said, genuine admiration in his voice. "You're wasted in corporate boardrooms." Amara laughed. "Boardrooms pay better than non-profit lectures. Besides, I'm learning a lot at Denton." Speaking of which, Elias lowered his voice. "There's something you should see." He pulled out his phone and showed her a video that had been circulating on social media. It showed Amara at a recent investor meeting, gently but firmly correcting a Chinese tech mogul's tonal Mandarin mistake that had accidentally changed the meaning of his proposal from mutual investment to something closer to mutual destruction. The clip had gone viral in business circles with the caption, "Waitress genius saves billion-dollar deal." "Is this bad?" Amara asked, uncertain. "Bad? It's fantastic PR for the company," Elias replied. "The board is thrilled." Gregory, however, he trailed off meaningfully. Amara understood. In the months since joining Denton Global, Gregory Denton had made his resentment clear. He assigned her to the most tedious translation tasks, scheduled her for early morning meetings knowing she had night classes, and forgot to include her in email chains about projects she was working on. "Let me guess," Amara sighed. "He's not happy about me getting attention." "That's putting it mildly," Elias confirmed. "But he can't touch you now. Your star is rising too quickly." The following week proved Elias right. An African tech consortium was in town, exploring potential partnerships with American companies. Their CEO, Dr. Kwame Bennett, specifically, requested Amara's presence at their meeting with Denton Global. "I saw your handling of the Wang Technologies negotiation," Dr. Bennett told her, his British Ghanaian accent crisp and precise. "Most impressive. And then to discover you have roots in West Africa as well? I insisted you be part of these discussions." Gregory had no choice but to include Amara in the high-profile meeting. His smile was fixed and cold as he introduced her as one of our rising talents in international relations. The words clearly tasted bitter on his tongue. Throughout the 4-hour, Session. Dr. Bennett directed questions to Amara, valuing her insights on African market dynamics. By the meeting's end, he had made his preference clear. Denton Global would get his business, but only if Amara was their designated liaison. Your linguistic skills are valuable, of course, he told her privately as the meeting concluded. But it's your cultural intelligence that truly sets you apart. You understand the nuances that others miss. Gregory cornered her afterward in an empty conference room. Enjoy your moment in the sun, Ms. Okafor, he said, voice low and dangerous. But remember who signs your checks. I built this company from nothing, and I won't have some diversity hire using it as her personal stepping stone. Amara held his gaze steadily. I'm here to do my job, Mr. Denton. Nothing more, nothing less. We'll see about that. Gregory's campaign against her intensified. He began scheduling her for overlapping meetings, setting her up to fail. On Tuesday morning, Amara found herself double-booked. A Japanese delegation at 10 a.m. and a Brazilian investment group at the same time, on opposite sides of the building. Rather than panic, Amara improvised. She met briefly with the Japanese team first, establishing rapport and explaining the situation honestly. Then she hurried to the Brazilians, apologizing for the delay by briefly addressing them in Portuguese. Moving between the two meetings required careful timing and quick thinking, but by lunchtime, both groups were impressed with her attentiveness and cultural sensitivity. How did you manage it? Elias asked later, genuinely curious. Code switching, Amara explained. Not just languages, but cultural approaches. The Japanese team values structure and preparation, so I provided detailed written translations in advance. The Brazilians respond to personal connection and storytelling, so I focused on building relationships quickly. Elias shook his head in admiration. Gregory was certain you'd crash and burn today. I know, Amara replied simply. That's why I couldn't. One crisp autumn afternoon, Amara received an unexpected text message from a number she didn't recognize. Tea at the Gardner, Museum 3 p.m. Melanie Denton, Gregory's wife. They had met briefly at a company function, exchanging the polite pleasantries expected of such encounters. Melanie had struck Amara as intelligent, but reserved, always slightly in her husband's view. Shadow curiosity overcame caution, and at precisely 3 p.m. Amara found herself in the museum's sunlit cafe. Melanie was already seated, an elegant woman in her 40s with auburn hair and shrewd eyes that didn't miss much. Thank you for coming, Melanie said, pouring tea from a delicate pot. I've been wanting to talk to you privately for some time. Must admit I was surprised by your invitation, Amara replied carefully. I imagine you were. Melanie stirred her tea thoughtfully. Gregory doesn't know I'm here. He wouldn't approve. Amara tensed slightly. Mrs. Denton. Melanie, please. She waved a manicured hand. This isn't about my husband, not directly. It's about you. Her gaze was evaluating but not unkind. You're making quite the impression at Denton Global. Not everyone can do that while facing obstacles. I'm not sure what you mean. I think you do. Melanie took a sip of her tea. I know what it's like to be sidelined in your own story, Amara. To have your contributions minimized. To watch men take credit for your ideas. The admission hung between them, unexpected and revealing. Before I was Mrs. Gregory Denton, Melanie continued, I was Melanie Harrington, with an MBA from Wharton and a promising career in finance. Now, I'm the perfect corporate wife who organizes charity galas and knows which wines pair best with salmon. You gave up your career? Amara asked. Not gave up. Traded away, piece by piece, a compromise here, a concession there. All so reasonable at the time. Melanie's smile held a trace of bitterness. I'm telling you this because I see something in you that I once had. Something worth protecting. I appreciate your concern, but this isn't charity or pity. Melanie interrupted sharply. It's recognition. The company talks about diversity and inclusion, but the old guard, Gregory's circle, they see talent like yours as a threat to the natural order. And you're warning me? I'm acknowledging you. Melanie leaned forward. You've made an ally in Elias, which is smart. But don't underestimate what Gregory will do to maintain control. He doesn't play fair, and he doesn't forget slights. As they parted outside the museum, Melanie handed Amara a business card with her personal number written on the back. If you ever need to talk about anything, call me. Amara tucked the card into her pocket, unsure what to make of this strange, new alliance. At home that evening, Amara found Mika surrounded by younger students from her school. French textbooks and worksheets covered the kitchen table as Mika patiently explained verb conjugations to a confused-looking boy. Non. Com. Ça, Jason, Mika corrected gently, guiding his pencil. Je vais, tu vas, il va. Amara watched from the doorway, heart swelling with pride. At 15, Mika was already becoming a leader, sharing her own love of languages with others. Since when do you tutor? Amara asked after the students had left. Since last month, Mika replied, gathering scattered papers. Ms. Winters said I have a gift for explaining things. I get paid $10 an hour from the academic support budget. That's wonderful. Amara hugged her sister tightly. I thought, maybe I could help with expenses, Mika said hesitantly. You're always working so hard and now with school and the new job. Hey. Amara pulled back to look Mika in the eye. That's not your responsibility. You focus on being a teenager and getting good grades. But I want to help, Mika insisted. You've done everything for us since Mom died. Let me do this small thing. Amara relented, recognizing the same determination in her sister that she felt in herself. All right. But most of it goes into your college fund. Mika's smile faltered. Slightly. I got another note today. She pulled a crumpled paper from her backpack and handed it to Amara. It was the third such note in 2 weeks, anonymous messages targeting Mika with increasingly personal attacks. Nobody wants to hear your fake French. Go back to Africa with your scholarship-stealing sister. Amara's hands shook with anger. Have you told Ms. Winters about these? Mika shook her head. It'll just make it worse. Besides, I know who it is. Tyler Westfield's dad lost his job at some big company where a black woman got promoted instead. He rants about it all the time, and Tyler just repeats whatever his dad says. Amara fought to keep her expression neutral, not wanting to add to Mika's burden. If it happens again, promise you'll tell someone? These kinds of threats can escalate. I promise, Mika agreed reluctantly. But I'm not scared of them, Amara. I'm proud of us, of you. They can't take that away. The following week brought the biggest test of Amara's growing influence at Denton Global. The company was preparing to announce a major expansion into African markets, with a press conference scheduled to unveil the initiative. Gregory had been positioning himself as the architect of the expansion, despite the fact that Amara had developed many of the key strategies based on her work with Dr. Bennett's consortium. On the morning of the board presentation, the final step before the public announcement, Amara arrived to find her name conspicuously absent from the speaker list. Instead, Gregory had assigned her to take notes. Is there a problem, Ms. Okafor? Gregory asked when she approached him before the meeting. I developed half of this proposal, Amara said evenly. Dr. Bennett specifically requested my involvement, and you'll be involved, taking comprehensive minutes. Gregory's smile didn't reach his eyes. Unless you think that's beneath your talents? Before Amara could respond, Elias joined them, several board members in tow. Ah, there you are, Amara. I was just telling Dr. Fitzgerald about your brilliant handling of the Nairobi negotiations. An older woman with silver hair and sharp eyes extended her hand. Dr. Patricia Fitzgerald, head of the International Strategy Committee. Your work on this expansion has been exceptional, young lady. I'm looking forward to hearing your presentation today. Gregory's smile froze. Actually, I'll be delivering the full presentation, Patricia. Miss Okafor is assisting with logistics. Dr. Fitzgerald raised an eyebrow. Is that so? Because the board specifically requested that we hear from the team who developed the strategy, including Ms. Okafor. Her insights on the cultural nuances of the West African markets were highlighted in last month's report. The standoff was brief but decisive. 10 minutes later, Amara found herself at the podium, presenting her portion of the expansion strategy to the entire board. She spoke with confidence and authority, her deep understanding of both the business metrics and cultural context evident in every slide. When she finished, the boardroom erupted in applause. Several members approached her afterward with questions and congratulations. Gregory stood to the side, his expression thunderous. "You humiliated me," he hissed when he finally cornered her in the hallway afterward. "You went over my head to the board." "I did my job," Amara replied calmly. "The job I was hired to do." "Let me make something perfectly clear." Gregory stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You are here because it looks good on our diversity reports, not because you belong in this company. I built Denton Global, and I decide who succeeds here." Amara stood her ground, refusing to be intimidated. "Mr. Denton, with all due respect, my work speaks for itself." "Does it?" His laugh was cold. "You mock what you don't understand. This isn't a game where the smartest person wins. It's about power and connections, things you'll never have." "You mock what you fear," Amara countered, finally giving voice to the truth she'd recognized from their first meeting. "And you fear me, because I've built myself from the ashes you left people like me in." Gregory's face contorted with rage, but before he could respond, Elias rounded the corner. "There you are," he said cheerfully, deliberately ignoring the tension. "Amara, you're needed for the press briefing preparations. The communications team has some questions about terminology for the press release." As Amara walked away with Elias, she could feel Gregory's eyes burning into her back. She had crossed a line, and they both knew it. The question now was what he would do about it. The answer came sooner than expected. Despite Gregory's opposition, Amara was given a prominent role in the expansion announcement. International partners had specifically requested her presence, leaving him no choice but to include her in the massive deal-closing ceremony. The press coverage was overwhelmingly positive. "Denton Global pioneers inclusive approach to African market expansion," read one headline. A business magazine featured a photo of Amara, alongside Dr. Bennett, captioned, "The new face of international business relations." For a brief shining moment, it seemed Amara had finally secured her place at the table. Her unique combination of linguistic prowess and cultural intelligence had proven invaluable, and even her critics within the company had to acknowledge her contributions. But in the quiet corners of the executive floor, Gregory Denton was plotting his revenge. The first hint of trouble came on an ordinary Tuesday. Amara arrived at work to find her security clearance had been downgraded, restricting her access to certain documents and areas of the building. When she inquired with HR, she was told it was a system update that would be resolved shortly. By Friday, the glitch remained unresolved. Amara had missed 2 important meetings because she couldn't access the secure conference rooms where they were held. Emails containing vital information weren't reaching her inbox. When she tried to access translation files she had been working on, the system claimed she didn't have permission. "Something's wrong," she told Elias during a hastily arranged coffee break. "It's like I'm being systematically cut out of the workflow," Elias frowned. "I've noticed. Gregory's been unusually quiet lately. Never a good sign. Let me see what I can find out." The following week, Amara was assigned to prepare materials for an upcoming presentation to potential partners in Vietnam. She worked tirelessly, translating complex legal and financial terms, ensuring cultural sensitivity in all marketing materials, and coordinating with the Vietnamese team. 2 days before the presentation, she received an urgent email from an IT administrator requesting verification of recent translation changes. When she opened the attached files, her blood ran cold. The translations were riddled with errors, offensive terms, grammatical mistakes, and mistranslated financial figures that drastically altered the terms of the proposed partnership. "These aren't my translations," she told the IT administrator. "Marcus Wright over the phone. Someone has tampered with my files. The system shows they were last modified using your credentials," Marcus replied, his tone professionally neutral. "At 11:42 p.m. last Thursday." "That's impossible. I was at home with my sister. I logged off at 6:30. I'm just telling you what. The logs show, Ms. Okafor. I've already had to escalate this to Mr. Denton and the compliance team. Amara felt sick. This wasn't a coincidence or a mistake. It was sabotage. And it had Gregory Denton's fingerprints all over it, though she had no way to prove it. She spent the next 48 hours frantically correcting the corrupted translations, working through the night to ensure the presentation materials were accurate. By the time she finished, she was exhausted but satisfied that the damage had been contained. Or so she thought. On the morning of the presentation, Amara was stopped at the lobby security desk. "I'm sorry, Ms. Okafor, but I can't let you upstairs," the guard said apologetically. "Your access has been suspended pending an investigation." Investigation? Into what? "I don't have those details, ma'am. I just know you're to wait for security to escort you to human resources." Bewildered and increasingly alarmed, Amara was led to a small conference room on the second floor. Inside waited Brenda Thompson from HR, a man she didn't recognize who was introduced as Jim Parker from Legal, and Gregory Denton himself, his expression a mask of grave concern. "Ms. Okafor," Brenda began formally, "serious allegations have been raised concerning your recent work on the Vietnam Partnership materials." "What? Allegations?" Amara demanded. "Someone tampered with my translations. I spent 2 days fixing them." "According to our records," Jim Parker interjected, "you accessed the system late Thursday night and made unauthorized changes to official company documents. Changes that, if they had gone undetected, would have severely damaged our relationship with the Vietnamese partners." "That's absurd. I wasn't even here Thursday night." "We have login records and security footage," Gregory added smoothly. "It shows someone using your credentials and entering the building with your ID card." Amara's mind raced. "Then someone stole my ID or copied it. I was home with my sister. She can verify that." "Your sister," Gregory repeated, his tone making it clear what he thought of that alibi. How convenient. For the next hour, Amara was subjected to a barrage of accusations. The evidence against her seemed overwhelming. System logs, corrupted files traced to her computer, security footage showing someone, face obscured, entering the building using her access card. "This is a setup," she said finally, her voice trembling with anger and disbelief. "Mr. Denton has been trying to undermine me from day one. This is just his latest attempt." Gregory's expression hardened. "That's a serious accusation, Ms. Okafor. One that further demonstrates your lack of judgment and professionalism." "Given the severity of this breach," Brenda concluded, "we have no choice but to suspend you immediately, pending further investigation. You'll be escorted to your desk to collect your personal belongings, after which your access to all company systems will be terminated." "You can't do this," Amara protested. "I've done nothing wrong." But her objections fell on deaf ears. 20 minutes later, she stood on the sidewalk outside Denton Global headquarters, a small box containing her desk items clutched in her arms, her employee badge confiscated. Security had watched her every move as she packed up, as if she might steal something or cause damage on her way out. The humiliation was complete. By evening, the story had hit the business news cycle. "Fraudulent Waitress translator causes international incident at Denton Global," read one particularly vicious headline. The articles painted her as an unqualified diversity hire who had sabotaged an important business deal when her lack of actual qualifications was about to be exposed. Amara sat in her apartment, staring numbly at her phone as the notifications poured in. Colleagues, former colleagues now, sending messages ranging from confused support to thinly veiled satisfaction at her downfall. Social media was even worse, with strangers weighing in on her supposed fraud and incompetence. "Is it true?" Mika asked quietly, sitting beside her on the couch. "What they're saying about you?" "No," Amara replied, her voice hollow. "Someone set me up. Someone with access and power." "Gregory Denton," Mika stated with the certainty of youth. "He's always hated you. Hating me is one thing. Framing me for corporate sabotage is another." Amara ran a hand over her face. "I can't prove it was him, Mika. That's the worst part. He's covered his tracks perfectly." Her phone rang, Mrs. Boudreau calling for the third time that day. Amara hesitated, then answered. Child, what's happening? The old woman demanded without preamble. I'm seeing your name dragged through mud all over the business channels. Amara explained the situation as best she could, her voice breaking several times as she recounted the morning's events. Listen to me, Mrs. Boudreau said when she finished. This stinks of a setup. I know people who can look into this. Old. Friends from my intelligence days. Intelligence days? Amara repeated, confused. Mrs. Boudreau laughed shortly. You think I was always a restaurant owner? Before Vietnam, before America, I had another life. Let me make some calls. After hanging up, Amara tried to process this new information about her mentor, but before she could dwell on it, another call came through. Elias. Amara, thank God you answered. He sounded tense, almost frightened. I don't have much time. Gregory's gone too far this time. I've been looking into the server logs and there's evidence of tampering. I'm going to take this to the board. Elias, be careful. If he did this to me, I know the risks. But I can't stand by and watch him destroy someone's career just because his ego can't handle being outshone. There was muffled talking in the background. I have to go. I'll contact you when I can. The following morning brought unexpected news. Melanie Denton had reached out, requesting a discreet meeting at the same museum cafe where they'd first talked. I don't know if I should, Amara told Mika. For all I know, she could be part of the setup. Or she could have information, Mika countered. You always tell me not to make assumptions about people. Reluctantly, Amara agreed to the meeting. Melanie was already waiting when she arrived, looking tense and preoccupied. Thank you for coming, she said, her voice low. I had to see you. What Gregory's done. It's unconscionable. Amara stiffened. You know it was him? I found something, Melanie replied, glancing around nervously. Documents in his home office, linking him to the altered files. There's more. Offshore accounts, internal memos about problem employees who were systematically pushed out. Most of them women, people of color, or both. You searched his office? Amara couldn't hide her surprise. Our marriage has been a sham for years, Melanie said bluntly. But I've stayed, partly out of habit, partly because leaving meant losing. Everything I've sacrificed for, but this, she shook her head. This crosses a line I can't ignore. What are you going to do? I've copied everything to a flash drive. Melanie's hand moved to her purse, then stopped. But I need to be careful about how I use it. Gregory has powerful friends, and he knows things about me that could be damaging. Before they could discuss further, Melanie's phone buzzed. She checked it, her face paling. I have to go. Gregory's called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. He's going to try to make this official. Have you formally terminated and possibly even pursue legal action against you? On what grounds? Amara demanded. Corporate espionage, breach of contract, defamation. He'll throw everything at you to make sure you can't fight back. Melanie stood hurriedly. I'll be in touch when I can. As Melanie rushed away, Amara sat alone at the cafe table, the magnitude of what she was facing finally sinking in. Her career was in tatters, her reputation destroyed, and a powerful man with resources and connections was determined to bury her completely. Her phone buzzed with a notification, another news article about the Denton Global Translation scandal. This one questioning her academic credentials and suggesting she had faked her language proficiency. The comment section was filled with vitriol, much of it tinged with racism and sexism. But amid the hatred, something unexpected was happening. Justice for Amara was trending in local social media circles. Leading the charge was Mika, who had mobilized her friends and classmates to share stories of Amara's character and achievements. Former restaurant customers from La Maison d'Or were posting about her linguistic abilities. Dr. Bennett had released a statement supporting her skills and integrity. A small resistance was forming. The next morning, Gregory arranged a press conference, ostensibly to address the unfortunate situation and clarify the company's position. Amara received a formal email inviting her to attend and make a statement regarding recent events. "It's a trap," Elias warned when she called him. "He wants you to grovel publicly, to beg for your job back. It reinforces his narrative that you were never qualified in the first place. What should I do? Don't give him what he wants. If you attend, do it on your terms." Amara arrived at Denton Global for the press conference dressed impeccably in a tailored black suit, her head held high despite the whispers and stares that followed her through the lobby. Cameras flashed as she took a seat in the front row, directly in Gregory's line of sight. He faltered momentarily when he saw her, clearly not expecting her to actually show up. But he recovered quickly, launching into a prepared statement about maintaining the highest standards of integrity and unfortunate incidents that, while rare, must be addressed decisively. When he finished, he turned to Amara with a practiced expression of regret. "Ms. Okafor, would you like to make a statement at this time?" All eyes turned to her. This was the moment Gregory had orchestrated, her public humiliation, complete with cameras to capture her downfall. Slowly, deliberately, Amara rose from her seat. She looked at Gregory for a long moment, seeing the anticipation in his eyes. Then, without saying a word, she turned and walked calmly toward the exit. "Ms. Okafor?" Gregory called after her, his voice sharp with surprise. "Don't you have anything to say?" Amara paused at the door, turning slightly. "Not to you," she said clearly, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. Then she walked out, leaving Gregory standing at the podium, his script in tatters. Outside, away from the cameras and the spectacle, Amara finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of what had happened. She walked to a nearby park and found a secluded bench where, for the first time in years, she broke down in tears. Everything she had worked for, everything she had built for herself and Mika, was crumbling around her. As dusk fell, and the park emptied, Amara remained on the bench, emotionally exhausted but unable to face going home yet. A woman walking with a young girl passed by, then stopped and turned back. "Excuse me," the woman said hesitantly. "Are you Amara Okafor?" Amara tensed, expecting accusations or insults. "Yes." To her surprise, the woman smiled warmly. "I thought so. My daughter saw your picture in the news." She gestured to the girl who was staring at Amara with undisguised admiration. "She told me yesterday that when she grows up she wants to be, just like you, someone who speaks many languages and stands up for herself." Struck speechless, Amara could only nod as the pair continued their walk. The brief encounter, however, had sparked something inside her. If a child she'd never met could find inspiration in her story, then perhaps all was not lost. As she walked home through the darkening streets, Amara's mind began to work in a way it hadn't since the scandal broke. She mentally replayed conversations, cataloged suspicious incidents, recalled Mrs. Boudreau's cryptic advice from months ago. "In my intelligence days we had a saying, the truth leaves fingerprints, even when hands are gloved." Fingerprints. Evidence. Trails that couldn't be completely erased. By the time she reached her apartment, a plan was beginning to form. Gregory Denton had used his power and position to try to destroy her. But in doing so, he had revealed vulnerabilities of his own: arrogance, vindictiveness, and a fundamental underestimation of her resilience. Mika was waiting up, despite the late hour. "How was the press conference?" "Educational," Amara replied, a new determination in her voice. "I learned something important today." "What's that?" "That Gregory Denton may have the power right now, but he's forgotten something crucial about language." "What?" Amara smiled for the first time in days. "Every story can be rewritten." Dawn broke over Boston as Amara sat cross-legged on her living room floor surrounded by printouts, notebooks, and her laptop. She hadn't slept. Instead, she'd spent the night meticulously piecing together her defense, searching for the digital fingerprints Gregory Denton might have left behind. Mika emerged from her bedroom, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Have you been up all night?" Amara looked up, her eyes tired but alert. I remembered something important. When I was translating the Vietnamese contracts last month, I downloaded copies of all the original documents to study the terminology. It was something I'd always done, keeping backups to practice with later. And that helps how? Because, Amara said, turning her laptop screen toward Mika, I have the original correct translations. The timestamps and metadata are intact. This proves the versions they're claiming I sabotaged were altered after I'd already submitted the final drafts. Mika's eyes widened. That's evidence. It's a start, but not enough on its own. Amara rubbed her temples. Gregory's too smart to leave an obvious trail. If he used someone in IT to tamper with my files, they would have covered their tracks. The doorbell rang, startling them both. Few people knew where they lived, and fewer still would visit unannounced at 7 a.m. Cautiously, Amara opened the door to find Mrs. Boudreau standing there, a large paper bag in her arms. You look terrible, the old woman declared, pushing past Amara into the apartment. When's the last time you ate? Mrs. B, what are you doing here? Bringing breakfast, she replied, placing the bag on the kitchen counter. And information. Mika peeked into the bag. Croissants. From yesterday, but still good. Eat. Mrs. Boudreau turned to Amara. Now listen carefully. I've been making calls to old contacts. Did you know I worked as a linguistics decoder during the Cold War? Before the restaurant? Before coming to America? Amara blinked in surprise. You mentioned intelligence work, but no time for stories now. What matters is I still know people who know people. She pulled a small notebook from her pocket. Your Mr. Denton has made enemies over the years. People who've been waiting for him to make a mistake. Did he make one? Mrs. Boudreau's eyes gleamed. All men like him do, eventually. Arrogance makes them sloppy. She tapped the notebook. You need to learn about metadata trails. When documents are altered, they leave traces. Digital fingerprints that can be tracked if you know where to look. For the next hour, Mrs. Boudreau walked Amara through techniques for examining document histories and server logs, skills she'd acquired during her surprising previous career. They pored over Amara's saved files, identifying discrepancies in the versions that had been used to frame her. This will help, Amara said, taking careful notes. But it's still my word against his, and he has the company's resources behind him. Then you need more evidence, Mrs. Boudreau replied matter-of-factly. And allies. Who else might know what Denton has been doing? Elias Monroe has been trying to help, but he's in a precarious position, and Melanie Denton contacted me. The wife? Mrs. Boudreau raised an eyebrow. Interesting. She says she found documents in Gregory's home office linking him to the altered files. She copied them to a flash drive. Then you need that drive. Amara's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Need to see you. Same place. Noon today. The museum cafe was nearly empty when Amara arrived. Melanie sat at a corner table, a large sunglasses doing little to disguise her evident distress. When she removed them, Amara was shocked to see her left eye was slightly swollen. Are you okay? Amara asked, sliding into the seat across from her. I'm fine, Melanie replied tersely. Gregory and I had a disagreement last night. Nothing unusual. She reached into her purse and discreetly slid a small flash drive across the table. Everything I could find is on here. Emails about monitoring your computer, instructions to IT staff, even a documented history of other problem employees he's pushed out over the years. Amara stared at the tiny device, hardly believing it could contain such powerful evidence. Why are you doing this? Melanie's laugh was brittle. Maybe I'm tired of watching talented people destroyed because they threaten his ego. Maybe I'm tired of being an accomplice through my silence. She looked away. Or maybe I'm just finally doing something I should have done years ago. This could hurt you too, Amara said quietly. I know. Melanie put her sunglasses back on. Use it wisely. And Amara, be careful. When Gregory feels cornered, he becomes unpredictable. After Melanie left, Amara remained at the cafe, the flash drive feeling impossibly heavy in her pocket. She knew viewing its contents in public would be reckless, but the temptation was almost overwhelming. Her phone rang. "Elias, where are you?" he asked without preamble. "We need to meet. I found something in the server logs. I'm at the Gardner Museum Cafe. But Elias, I already have evidence. Melanie gave me—" "Not over the phone," he cut her off. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, don't leave." While waiting, Amara's phone buzzed with a notification from Mika's social media campaign. Just as Amara was gaining traction, former employees had begun reaching out, sharing their own experiences of discrimination and sabotage at Denton Global. What had started as a personal vendetta against Amara was revealing a pattern of abuse extending far beyond her case. When Elias arrived, he looked haggard but determined. "The IT department keeps backup logs of all system access," he explained after ordering coffee. "Gregory had someone delete the regular logs but forgot about the secondary backups. They clearly show someone using admin credentials to access your account the night the files were altered. Can you prove it was Gregory?" "Not directly. The credentials belonged to Marcus Wright in IT, a loyal Gregory lieutenant. But I found emails instructing Marcus to handle the situation with our troublesome translator. It's circumstantial, but combined with other evidence." Amara pulled out her laptop. "Let's see what Melanie found." The flash drive contained a treasure trove of incriminating documents. Gregory's private emails discussing how to manage the Okafor problem, files tracking offshore payments to an IT consultant for special projects, and most damning of all, a folder labeled Personnel Management, containing detailed strategies for forcing out employees who threatened Gregory's authority or control. "This is worse than I imagined," Elias murmured, scrolling through the files. "He's been doing this systematically for years. The question is, what do we do with it?" Amara asked. "If we go public, it could destroy the company. Maybe that's what needs to happen." Amara considered this. There are hundreds of innocent employees who would be hurt, and the international partners who've put their trust in Denton Global's commitments. "Then we need leverage," Elias said thoughtfully. "Something that forces change without destroying everything." "What about the Korean investors?" Amara suggested. "Dr. Park was very concerned about ethical business practices when I worked with him. If he knew what was happening—" Elias nodded slowly. "One major investor pulling out would create enough pressure for the board to act, without necessarily collapsing the company." He checked his watch. "I have to get back before I'm missed. Gregory's watching me closely. Be careful with that drive. It's your insurance policy." After Elias left, Amara made a decision. She composed a careful email to Dr. Park, outlining the situation in professional terms and attaching select documents from the flash drive that demonstrated the pattern of discrimination without revealing company secrets. She emphasized her concern for the integrity of their partnership, rather than her personal grievance. The response came faster than she expected. Dr. Park was deeply troubled by the evidence and would be reconsidering the terms of their relationship with Denton Global unless the company took immediate action to address these ethical concerns. Within hours, the ripple effect began. Dr. Park contacted other investors, who reached out to board members with questions. By evening, Amara received a text from Elias. "Board emergency meeting called for tomorrow. Gregory furious, firing people left and right to create scapegoats. Be ready." The next morning brought an unexpected email from Brenda Thompson in HR, requesting Amara's presence at a confidential arbitration meeting to resolve outstanding concerns regarding recent events. The message was carefully worded, betraying nothing of the chaos Elias had described. Amara deliberated her response. This could be another trap, but it could also be an opportunity to present her evidence in an official setting. After consulting with Mrs. Boudreau and Elias, she agreed to attend, but with conditions. She would bring legal representation, and the meeting would include board members, not just Gregory and his allies. When Amara arrived at Denton Global, the following morning, she was escorted to the main boardroom rather than the small conference room where she'd been ambushed before. Inside waited an assemblage that made her pulse quicken. Gregory, looking uncharacteristically disheveled, several board members including Dr. Fitzgerald, Brenda from HR, and the company's chief legal counsel. Gregory's face darkened when he saw her. This is a private corporate matter, Ms. Okafor. Your conditions were inappropriate and unnecessary. Yet here we all are, Amara replied calmly, taking a seat. I believe transparency benefits everyone at this point. Before Gregory could respond, the door opened again and Melanie walked in. The room fell silent as she took a seat beside Amara. Gregory's expression shifted from anger to confusion. Melanie, what are you doing here? Supporting the truth, she replied, her voice steady despite her evident nervousness. The door opened once more, admitting a woman in a crisp suit who introduced herself as Caroline Winters from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. I'm here as an observer, she explained. My office received multiple complaints regarding discriminatory practices at Denton Global. Gregory's face flushed with fury. This is outrageous. Who authorized this? I did, Dr. Fitzgerald stated firmly. As head of the ethics committee, I felt outside oversight was appropriate given the serious nature of the allegations. The meeting quickly transformed from what Gregory had clearly intended as another attempt to intimidate Amara into a formal examination of the evidence against him. Amara presented her case methodically, the original translation files with their timestamps, Elias's server log findings, and finally, the damning contents of Melanie's flash drive. These documents, Melanie explained, her voice gaining strength as she spoke, were found in Gregory's home office. They detail not only the specific plan to frame Ms. Okafor, but a long-standing pattern of similar actions against employees deemed threatening to his authority. The board members examined the evidence in stunned silence. Gregory alternated between vehement denials and attempts to discredit the sources, but with each passing minute, his position weakened. The offshore accounts are a routine part of international business, he insisted, and the personnel files are standard performance management documentation. Is it standard practice to refer to employees as diversity liabilities to be managed out of the organization? Caroline Winters asked, reading directly from one of the documents. Gregory turned to Melanie, his expression murderous. You had no right to access my private files. This is a violation of what, Gregory? Melanie interrupted. Our marriage? The one you've treated as a business arrangement for years? The one that gave you cover while you systematically crushed the careers of anyone who threatened your fragile ego? The room fell silent again. Dr. Fitzgerald cleared her throat. In light of this evidence, I move that Gregory Denton be immediately suspended pending a full investigation, and that Ms. Okafor be reinstated with full back pay and a formal company apology. The motion passed with only one dissenting vote. Gregory was escorted from the room, still protesting his innocence and threatening lawsuits against everyone present. When it was over, Brenda approached Amara with reinstatement papers and an awkward expression. The company would like to offer you your position back, with a substantial compensation package for the misunderstanding. Amara looked at the papers, then around at the boardroom where, just weeks earlier, she had been celebrated for her contributions to the African expansion project. So much had changed. Thank you, she said finally. But I'll need time to consider the offer. As she left the building, a crowd of reporters had gathered in the lobby, alerted to the drama unfolding inside. Cameras flashed as she walked past, but Amara offered no comment. This victory, significant as it was, felt like just the beginning of a much larger battle. The story broke the next morning across all major business news outlets. Denton Global CEO suspended amid discrimination and sabotage allegations. Amara's phone rang constantly with journalists seeking comments, former colleagues expressing support or surprise, and even a few headhunters sensing an opportunity to recruit her. The public reaction was immediate and polarized. Many hailed her as a courageous whistleblower who had exposed corporate corruption. Others questioned her motives, suggesting she had orchestrated the scandal to advance her own career. Social media buzzed with both support and vitriol, with "Connor Justice for Amara" trending nationally alongside more hostile hashtags. You need to be careful, Elias warned during a call. Gregory still has powerful allies both inside and outside the company, and now he has nothing to lose. His warning proved prescient. 3 days after Gregory's suspension, Amara received a hand-delivered envelope containing a cease-and-desist letter from his personal attorneys, threatening defamation lawsuits if she spoke publicly about the case. The same day, her apartment building manager informed her that an anonymous caller had reported suspicious activity at her unit, triggering an inspection that found nothing. "They're trying to intimidate you," Mrs. Boudreau said when Amara showed her the letter. "It means you've hit a nerve." "It's working," Amara admitted. "I'm worried about Mika. She's already dealing with harassment at school because of all this." "Then you stop playing defense," the old woman replied firmly. "You take control of the narrative, after careful consideration and consultation with a lawyer recommended by Caroline Winters from the EEOC." Amara made two decisive moves. First, she declined Denton Global's reinstatement offer, instead requesting a formal settlement, acknowledging the wrongful termination and discrimination she had experienced. Second, and more significantly, she joined forces with 7 other former Denton Global employees, all mentioned in Gregory's personnel management files, to file a class action lawsuit alleging systematic discrimination, harassment, and wrongful termination practices under his leadership. The lawsuit sent shockwaves through the corporate world. Major news networks covered the story extensively, featuring interviews with the plaintiffs who shared similar experiences of being undermined, sabotaged, and eventually forced out after challenging Gregory's authority or receiving recognition he felt was rightfully his. From Waitress to Whistleblower, the Amara Okafor story read one headline. A respected business magazine published a feature article tracing her journey from La Maison d'Or to becoming the catalyst for what they termed a long overdue reckoning in corporate America. The increased visibility brought both opportunities and dangers. Amara received speaking invitations from universities and business conferences, eager to hear her perspective on corporate ethics and resilience. But she also received threats, anonymous emails and social media messages warning her to know her place and stop attacking successful white men. For security reasons, she and Mika temporarily moved in with Mrs. Boudreau, whose apartment, above the restaurant, offered both safety and community. The old woman's network of loyal customers and friends created an informal protective circle around them. As the lawsuit progressed, both sides were required to give depositions. Gregory's testimony proved to be a turning point. Under questioning from the plaintiff's attorney, his carefully maintained facade of corporate respectability crumbled. He became defensive, then openly hostile, at one point referring to Amara as an uppity waitress who got lucky with a few languages. When pressed about the pattern of discrimination evident in his personnel decisions, he lost his temper completely. "I built this company from nothing," he shouted. "I decide who succeeds there. Not some diversity committee, not some board worried about their ESG scores, and certainly not employees who don't know their place." The outburst was devastating to his case, revealing the prejudice that had driven his actions. His attorneys called for a recess, but the damage was done. Melanie's testimony proved equally pivotal, though for different reasons. Speaking calmly, but with evident emotion, she described her years as both witness and enabler of Gregory's discriminatory practices. "I stayed silent when I should have spoken up," she admitted. "I convinced myself it wasn't my place to interfere in business matters. But each time he destroyed someone's career because they threatened his sense of superiority, I became more complicit." When asked why she had finally decided to come forward, Melanie glanced at Amara before answering. "Because watching Ms. Okafor stand her ground with dignity, even as my husband tried to destroy her, made me realize how much courage I'd surrendered over the years. Some debts can only be paid by breaking your silence." Her testimony became a focal point for media coverage, with many outlets framing it as a powerful examination of the complex role of bystanders in workplace discrimination. Meanwhile, changes were happening at Denton Global. Following Gregory's suspension, the board had appointed Elias as interim CEO with a mandate to reform the company culture. His first actions included establishing an independent ethics committee, revising hiring and promotion practices to eliminate bias, and creating a protected whistleblower program. One by one, Gregory's closest allies were removed from leadership positions as their involvement in his discriminatory schemes came to light. Some resigned quietly. Others fought their terminations but ultimately lost as evidence of their complicity emerged. Throughout this period of upheaval, Amara found herself increasingly sought after as a speaker and commentator. Harvard Business School invited her to address students on ethical leadership. Columbia University asked her to participate in a panel on linguistic diversity in global business. The United Nations Language Alliance requested her insights on cultural communication and international diplomacy. At each event, Amara spoke with the same clarity and conviction that had guided her through the crisis. Language isn't just about words, she often said. It's about power. Who gets to speak, who gets heard, and who gets silenced. True communication requires not just understanding different languages, but recognizing the value of different voices. As her public profile rose, Amara found herself reflecting on her mother's teachings more frequently. She remembered sitting at their kitchen table as a child, listening to her mother recite proverbs in both Igbo and English, explaining how the same wisdom took on different shades of meaning in each language. Onye kwe chi ya ekwe, her mother would say. When one says yes, their personal God says yes also. Then she would translate the deeper meaning. Your belief shapes your reality. If you believe in yourself, the universe makes a path for you. Those memories sustained Amara during the most challenging moments of the lawsuit, especially when the pressure threatened to overwhelm her. They also helped her support Mika, who struggled with the sudden spotlight on their family. Everyone at school is talking about us, Mika complained one evening. Some kids think it's cool, but others, their parents work in finance and business, and they say you're destroying a great company because you couldn't handle criticism. Amara sat beside her sister on the bed. Does that bother you? What they say? Mika considered the question seriously. Not really. But sometimes I wonder if it would have been easier to just stay quiet. Easier, yes, Amara agreed. But our mother used to tell me something important. Uku anagi agba oso nefu. The foot doesn't run for nothing. There's always a reason to stand your ground, even when it's hard. I know, Mika said softly. I'm proud of you, Amara. I just worry. Sometimes. That's what family does. Amara hugged her sister tightly. We worry about each other, but we keep moving forward together. After 6 months of legal proceedings, the case reached its conclusion. Faced with overwhelming evidence and damaging testimony, Denton Global's board voted to settle the lawsuit rather than risk a public trial. The settlement included substantial financial compensation for all plaintiffs, mandatory company-wide reforms, and independent oversight of hiring and promotion practices for 5 years. Gregory Denton was permanently removed as CEO and forced to sell his controlling interest in the company. The board issued a formal public apology to Amara and the other plaintiffs, acknowledging the systemic failures that allowed discrimination to persist and committing to a new era of inclusive GATS leadership. At the press conference announcing the settlement, Amara was invited to speak last. Standing at the podium, facing a room full of cameras and reporters, she took a moment to gather her thoughts before addressing the crowd. I didn't ask for power, she said, her voice clear and steady. I asked for dignity. This case has taught me that too often, we must fight for both. But that fight is not just for ourselves. It's for everyone who comes after us. Everyone who deserves to be judged by their abilities rather than others' prejudices. She paused, looking around the room. This settlement is not an ending, but a beginning. The real work of creating truly inclusive workplaces where all talents are recognized and respected continues. That work belongs to all of us, executives and employees, institutions and individuals. As my mother would say in Igbo, Aka ni kwaka ekpe, aka ekpe akwaka ni. The right hand washes the left hand, and the left hand washes the right. We can only move forward together. A year after the settlement, Amara sat in a light-filled office overlooking Boston Harbor. The walls were adorned with framed newspaper headlines documenting her journey, alongside colorful artwork from various African countries and a large map marking the locations of Speechl Global's growing client list. The consulting firm she had founded with her settlement money had quickly established itself as a leader in cultural and linguistic consulting for international business. Unlike traditional translation services, Speechl specialized in the nuances of cross-cultural communication, helping companies navigate the complex human elements of global commerce. Amara had made a point of hiring talented individuals from underrepresented groups and regions, particularly focusing on languages and dialects often overlooked by larger firms. Her team now included 20 full-time consultants and dozens of specialized contractors around the world. A knock at her door interrupted her review of quarterly reports. Her assistant, Jason, poked his head in. "Your 11 o'clock is here, and Mrs. Boudreau called to confirm dinner tonight." "Thank you, Jason. Send them in." Amara smiled as her next appointment entered, a nervous young woman clutching a portfolio, clearly for a job interview. "Ms. Rivera, please have a seat. Tell me about your experience with indigenous Mexican languages." Later that afternoon, Amara made a special trip to La Maison d'Or. The restaurant was closed between lunch and dinner service, but Mrs. Boudreau was expecting her. The old woman sat at her usual table by the window, a pot of strong coffee and 2 cups waiting. "Business good?" Mrs. Boudreau asked as Amara joined her. "Very. We just signed contracts with 2 tech companies expanding into West Africa and a manufacturing firm entering Vietnam." Amara poured coffee for both of them. "How about here?" "Same as always. Good food, good customers." Mrs. Boudreau smiled. "Marcus is learning the business side now. He'll take over when these old bones decide to rest." They chatted comfortably about business and mutual friends until Mrs. Boudreau abruptly stood and disappeared into her office. She returned carrying an old leather-bound book. "This is for you," she said, placing it on the table. Time it was. Passed on. Amara opened the cover to find a French dictionary, its pages yellowed with age. Inside the front cover was an inscription in faded ink. "To Claudette, may these words build bridges between worlds. Dakar, 1954. "Your dictionary from Senegal," Amara murmured, touched by the gesture. "My father gave it to me when I was 12, Mrs. Boudreau explained. Said it would open doors for me. He was right." She tapped the cover gently. "Now it's yours. Pass it on when the time comes." Amara ran her fingers over the worn leather. "Thank you. This means more than I can say." "You've done well, child. Your mother would be proud." That evening, Amara attended Mika's school award ceremony. Now 16, Mika had blossomed in the past year, channeling her own linguistic talents into a pioneering program teaching younger students. Her initiative had caught the attention of educational foundations, and tonight she was receiving a scholarship for language innovation in youth education. Amara watched with pride as Mika took the stage to accept the award. "I want to thank my
teachers and mentors," Mika began confidently. Then, switching effortlessly to French, she continued, "Et je remercie ma sœur Amara, qui m'a montré la valeur des langues et le pouvoir des mots."
Finally, she added a phrase in Igbo that brought tears to Amara's eyes, a proverb their mother had often repeated about strength growing from adversity. As the audience applauded, Amara noticed a familiar face several rows ahead. Gregory Denton. Thinner than she remembered, his once immaculate appearance now slightly disheveled, he sat alone, applauding mechanically as he scanned the crowd. Their eyes met briefly before he looked away, clearly uncomfortable at being recognized. After the ceremony, Amara learned from another parent that Gregory was now giving paid seminars on corporate resilience to small business groups, a far cry from his former status. His reputation in major business circles was irreparably damaged, and most of his former contacts had distanced themselves from him. Amara felt no satisfaction at his downfall, only a quiet acknowledgement that actions eventually find their consequences. She deliberately avoided him as she and Mika left the auditorium. "Was that him?" Mika asked as they walked to the car. "Gregory Denton?" "Yes," Amara replied simply. "Aren't you going to say something to him?" Amara shook her head. "Some stories are better left finished." The following week brought news about Melanie Denton. Her memoir, Behind the Curtains, A Wife's Silence, A Woman's Voice, had been released to critical acclaim. The book detailed her experiences as the spouse of a powerful executive, exploring themes of complicity, courage, and redemption. Amara attended the Boston launch event, where Melanie spoke eloquently about the courage it takes to admit your own failures and the responsibility we all have to challenge injustice even when, especially when, doing so is personally costly. After the reading, they embraced warmly. "How are you?" Amara asked. "Finding my way," Melanie replied with a genuine smile. "The divorce was finalized last month. It's strange starting over at 50, but also liberating." She lowered her voice. "Did you hear about Elias?" "The official announcement is tomorrow, but yes." Elias Monroe had been confirmed as the permanent CEO of Denton Global, now rebranded as Monroe International. Under his leadership, the company had instituted groundbreaking diversity initiatives, promoted many of Amara's former allies, and established a foundation supporting educational opportunities for underrepresented groups in business. "He's doing good work," Melanie acknowledged. "Repairing what Gregory broke, and creating something better in its place," Amara added. "That's the real victory." As they parted, Melanie hesitated. "I never properly thanked you, Amara. Your courage gave me permission to find my own." "We lift each other up," Amara replied. Simply. That's how change happens. Back at her office the next day, Amara received an unusual delivery, a handwritten letter from Ghana. The carefully printed English was from a 12-year-old girl named Adwoa. "Dear Ms. Okafor, my teacher showed us a video of your speech at the United Nations. Because of you, I told my teacher I want to speak 10 languages, not just one. My father says I should be practical, but my mother says I should dream big like you did. Can a girl from Accra really become someone important who speaks for others? Please write back if you can." Amara immediately set aside her other work to compose a reply, enclosing one of her mother's Igbo proverbs translated into both English and Twi. That weekend, she gave her first lecture as a visiting professor at Boston University. The classroom was packed with graduate students eager to learn from her experiences in international business and linguistic diplomacy. "Language isn't just words," she told them as the session concluded. "It's power, and power shared is freedom. Remember that in whatever careers you pursue." As the students filed out, Amara remained at the lectern for a moment, reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this point. From the frightened young woman struggling to pay rent while caring for her sister, to a respected business leader and educator, the path had been neither straight nor easy. A memory surfaced, her mother's voice whispering in Igbo late one night when Amara, then just 10 years old, had been struggling with a school assignment. "Nwa mai mirenke oma," her mother had said gently. "You did well, my daughter." The memory no longer brought pain as it once had, only a sense of connection and continuity. Her mother's wisdom lived on through her, and now through Mika as well. Later, that afternoon, Amara and Mika walked together past La Maison d'Or, where Mrs. Boudreau waved from the window. They continued toward the Cultural Exchange Center, where Amara was scheduled to receive an award for her contributions to linguistic education and cultural understanding. As they approached the building, Amara noticed the new plaque installed by the entrance, "Voices for the Voiceless, celebrating those who bridge worlds through words." And below it, a smaller inscription that made her stop in her tracks, "Amara D. Okafor, Voice for the Voiceless, Champion of Dignity." "They added your name," Micah said, squeezing her hand. "Right where it belongs." Amara stood silently for a moment, taking in the simple recognition of her journey. Not the lawsuits or the headlines or even her professional success, but this acknowledgement of what had driven her all along. The belief that language could build bridges, that dignity was worth fighting for, and that one voice could open the way for many others. "Come on," she said finally, smiling at her sister. "We have more work to do." Together, they walked through the doors, into the next chapter of a story still being written, not just in English or French or Igbo, but in the universal language of courage. What would you risk to stand in your truth when the world is determined to silence you? If Amara's journey moved you, like this video, subscribe for more stories of courage against impossible odds, and share with someone who needs to be reminded of their own power.